Resisting temptation. Sometimes we are trying to build motivation to help us take action. But change can also demand the willpower to resist temptation and the urges to do things that take us in the opposite direction to our goals. I have been around the age of 3 or 4 when I visited my grandparents' house and walked into the garden to find my grandfather using a garden trimmer. Something wasn't working right, so he flipped the tool upside down and started pulling bits of grass out from between the blades. He turned to me and said, "Whatever you do, do not press that red BU, number 2D, on." I sat on the grass next to the red BU, number 2D, on the side of the trimmer and fixed my gaze on it. Don't press it. Don't press it. I wondered if it was one of those BU, number 2D, ons that gave a satisfying click when you pressed it. Don't press it. It looked really smooth along the top. Don't press it. Like a magnet, my hand reached out and pressed that red BU, number 2D, on. The trimmer instantly responded with a loud noise as the blades swung into action. Luck would have it, no fingers were lost that day, but I did learn a new curse word. Focusing on the thing I was not supposed to do turned out not to be a helpful strategy. So what does help when positive change demands that we resist temptation? One of the biggest factors is managing stress. The physiology of self-control is optimal when stress is low and heart rate variability is high. Heart rate variability is a measure of the variation in time between each heartbeat. So it tells us how much your heart rate changes throughout the day. You might notice that when you get out of bed in the morning your heart speeds up, or when you run for the bus. Then it gradually comes back down again. This means your body gears you up for action when needed and calms the body back down to rest and recover. But when we are under lots of stress, heart rate may remain high throughout the day, reduced variability. When it comes to resisting temptation and maximizing our willpower, we need that capacity to calm the body and mind. Anything that increases stress is going to have a negative impact on our ability to make wise choices for our future. Stress increases the likelihood that we will instead act based on how we feel right now and sabotage our goals. So if sleep deprived, depressed, anxious or not eating well, your heart rate variability goes down, along with your chances of sticking to your goals. Trying to give up smoking or unhealthy foods, or just trying to regulate your emotions in healthier ways, when it comes to relieving stress and increasing your capacity for willpower, exercise is a top choice. It has immediate E, number 1 FECT and a long-term impact, Odin and Cheng, 2006, Rensburg et al., 2009. So whatever change you are working on, increasing your level of activity, even in a small way, is a great way of strengthening your willpower to keep it up. McGonigal, 2012. Another big player in managing stress and the ability to make wise decisions is sleep. You only need one bad night's sleep to struggle with increased stress, trouble concentrating and low mood the next day. Self-control takes energy, and if you haven't had enough sleep, your brain has less access to that energy and becomes more vulnerable to high-stress reactions, squashing your capacity to control your actions. Change your relationship with failure. Something that can zap motivation is the prospect of failure, but that depends on the relationship we have with failure. If sitting up and going number 1 F track means we engage in vicious self at number 2D act in relentless self-criticism, we are likely to feel ashamed and defeated. If we associate failure with unworthiness, then starting anything new is going to feel overwhelming and procrastination will be front and center. We protect ourselves from the psychological threat of shame by sabotaging the process before it gets started. Shame is not as helpful for motivation as you might think. When we get caught in self-criticism and shame, we feel inadequate, defective and inferior. When we feel that way we want to hide, get smaller, disappear. It is urges to escape and avoid, rather than to dust ourselves out, number 1 F, and try again. In fact, it is so painful that it induces strong urges to block that feeling, which is risky for anyone living with addiction. If we want to persist at something and feel motivated to keep trying, we have to think carefully about how we respond to failure along the way. If there is ever resistance in therapy, it is when you explore the idea of being self-compassionate. I hear things like, I will lose my drive, become lazy. I would never achieve anything. I can't just let myself out, number 1 F, the hook like that. Most people have been surprised to find out that self-criticism is more likely to lead to an increase in depression rather than motivation. Gilbert et al., 2010. On the other hand, treating yourself with kindness, respect, honesty and encouragement at number 2 C or a failure is associated with increased motivation and BE, number 2D or outcomes. Wohl et al., 2010. If we are not aware of our self-criticism and the impact it is having on our fear of failure and motivation, then it is much harder to change it. Use these prompts to reflect on the way you talk to yourself at number 2 C or a setback. When you experience failure, what does your self-criticism sound like? What emotions are at number 2D ache to it? Do you suppose that the failure reveals something about your inadequacy or incompetence as a person? Do you notice any shame or hopelessness associated with that? What coping strategies tend to follow that self-criticism? How does that impact on your original goals? Think of a time when you failed at something and someone responded to you with kindness and encouragement. How did that feel? How did that help you to try again and succeed? Toolkit: How to respond to failure with compassion and accountability so you can get back on track. Bring to mind a recent memory of a failure or setback. Then work through the following exercise. 1. Notice what emotions are brought up by that memory and where you feel them in your body. 2. How did the self-criticism sound? What words and phrases came up and how did they influence how you felt? 3. How did you then respond to the feelings? 4. Bring to mind someone that you love or respect. If they experience the same failure, how might you have responded to them? Number 1F errantly. Why would you have shown them that respect? 5. How would you want them to perceive the setback in order to get them back on track? Chapter summary. We can't control the feeling of motivation. These are things we can do to increase the chances of feeling it more. Number 2CN. Physical movement cultivates feelings of motivation. Small amounts are number 2D or than nothing and can help build momentum. Staying connected with your goal helps to keep triggering moments of increased motivation. Small and consistent beats. Number 1F grand gestures. Learning to rest and replenish between stressful situations helps to maximize willpower. Shame is not as helpful for motivation as you might think. Changing your relationship with failure will help your motivation. Chapter 8. 21,789, 2,102,903 feet greater than. How do you make yourself do something when you don't feel like it? Number 2D or how much we reduce our stress and cultivate motivation. It can be fleeting. It comes and goes, so we cannot rely on it to always be there. There will always be things that we will never feel like doing. Tax returns, insurance renewals, taking the bins out. How do we make those happen, even when a part of us would prefer not to? Feelings are number 2C and accompanied by urges. Those urges are suggestions, nudges, persuasions telling us to try this or that to relieve the discomfort that we feel or to seek the reward that we anticipate. While those urges can be powerful, we don't have to do what they say. Opposite action. When we were children, my sisters and I would share a packet of Polo mints and compete for who could go the longest without crunching the mint, a challenge that is much more number 22 cult than it sounds. The urge to crunch the mints felt almost undeniable at the time. It demanded intense concentration and focus. As soon as you got distracted and let your guard down, your brain would take over on autopilot for you and the mint was history. If you try that game, what you notice is that your awareness focuses on your experience. You get to observe the sensation of an urge, and you get to create a gap between urge and action. Simply by paying number 2D attention, you get to choose whether you go with the urge or against it. When the task is as simple as holding back from crunching a mint, all you need is a bit of competitive sibling rivalry to keep you on task. When we aim to tackle much stronger urges toward ingrained number 2D earns of behavior that come along with intense emotional states, the challenge is much harder. Acting opposite to an urge, to instead choose a behavior that is more in line with where you want to go, is a key skill that people learn in therapy. Linehan, 1993. Opposite action skill is the deliberate number 2D to take an action that is the opposite of what the emotion is telling you to do. This is especially helpful when your coping strategies tend to cause you harm. Mindfulness is a key component of this skill. Paying number 2 attention to our experience, and the thoughts, emotions and urges that come with it, allows us to pause for just long enough to make an informed, sometimes pre-planned decision about what to do next. This means we can act based on our values rather than our emotions. The pain barrier. The best strategy for motivation is to take motivation out of the equation. There are things we do every day, whether we feel like it or not. For example, in the morning, you don't ask yourself whether you have the motivation to clean your teeth, it's just something you do. It is a habit so well practiced that you don't need to think about it anymore. You just do it. The reason for that is because it has been a non-negotiable part of your daily routine for most of your life. Imagine your brain is like a jungle. Every action that you take, the brain has to make connections or pathways between number 1F errant areas. When you repeat an action on a regular basis over a long period of time, like cleaning your teeth, those pathways become well-trodden and established. Those smooth, wide paths become easier to access so that your brain can do much of that action without you having to consciously think too much about it. But when you start something new, you have to carve out a fresh path, sometimes from scratch. That takes huge amounts of conscious number 1F effort. And if you don't use that path number 2C enough, it will always be number 1F effortful. Anytime that you are under stress, your brain will automatically choose the easiest route, which is the path well trodden. But you can repeat that new behavior as number 2C as you can, for enough times, then a new habit is established and becomes easier to use when you most need it. Here are a few tips on how to establish a new habit. Make the new behavior as easy as possible to do, especially in moments when you might not feel like taking action. Set up your environment in a way that supports your new change of behavior. In the early stages of the change, you cannot rely on habit. Make clear plans and set reminders if necessary. Add in a mix of short-term and longer-term rewards. Internal rewards work number 2D than external ones. So we don't need trophies as much as we need that internal celebration and acknowledgement that we are on the right track. Get clarity on why you are making this change and why it number 2D so much to you. You can use the values exercises in this book to help with that. See page 286. Establish this change as a part of your identity. This is how you do things now. How to persist for the long haul. Over the years, psychology research has challenged the idea that success is all down to innate talents and has shown that grit, Duckworth et al. 2007 and, in particular, perseverance play a vital role in our ability to succeed. Creed et al. 2017. But how do we achieve the kind of stamina that we need to be able to persevere even in the face of setbacks? Something that many people learn the hard way is that it doesn't mean just continuing to drive forward until you burn out. When we work on long-term goals and making changes that we want to maintain, we have to learn to counterbalance the stress of number 1F with the replenishment of rest. We don't need to always be working or always feel energized and refreshed. We need to be able to listen to the body and step back from number 1 effort so that we are ready to drive forward once again. Just like athletes nap in between training sessions and professional singers rest their voices by going for days without speaking, we need to recognize that regular rest and replenishment is crucial if we want to persevere at anything for the long haul. But not all breaks are equal. Most days are broken up by those quiet, sometimes boring moments in between periods of intense work and number 1 effort. If we use those in-between moments to clear emails, scroll through social media or get a few things done, the body and brain will not be returning to a rest state to recharge. So the next time you reach for your phone to fill the 15 minutes between meetings, why not step outside for some fresh air or find a space to close your eyes for a moment instead? We also need to make use of small rewards as we work on big goals. When we break down big challenges into smaller tasks and reward ourselves for reaching those milestones, we get the benefits of small dopamine hits along the way. It not only gives us a number 2D buzz that feels rewarding, it also drives us to look ahead to the next milestone and motivates us to keeping driving forward. It enables us to imagine how we might feel once we accomplish the challenge faced, and triggers desire and enthusiasm. Lieberman and Long, 2019. So, building in those small rewards along the way helps to refuel your desire for the end goal and your capacity to persevere. Let's say you are trying to run further than you ever have. When you start to feel tired, you tell yourself you are just going to get to the end of this road. When you do, you mentally give yourself a pat on the back for achieving it. You see it as a sign that you are on the right track. This internal reward to yourself gives you a dopamine release. This suppresses the noradrenaline that causes you to give up. As a result, you get an extra boost to keep going for a bit longer. This is not the same as positive self-talk. You focus on a small, specific goal and the accomplishment of it means you are heading in the direction of your ultimate goal. Huberman, 2021. So, when the task ahead feels like a mountain to climb, you don't look up at the peak. You narrow your focus and set yourself the challenge to make it to that next ridge. When you get there, you allow yourself to absorb that feeling of being on your way. Then you go again. Gratitude. A gratitude practice can be a powerful tool for longer-term goals that demand persistent number 1 effort. Turn your number 2D engine towards gratitude. Self-generates those internal rewards that replenish and restore your capacity to keep returning to the number 1 effort that is required of you. A simple sheet number 2C of language can help us turn towards gratitude. For example, try switching I have to with I get to. As mentioned, we can also practice gratitude in a more formal way by number 2D-ing down with pen and paper and writing down the things that we feel grateful for each day. With that, we are turning our number 2D engine on purpose in a way that number 2C's our emotional state. But it is not only that immediate impact on our emotions that we gain. When we practice gratitude on a regular basis, we are repeating an action. As described previously, the more we repeat an action, the easier it becomes for the brain to do it with less number 1 effort in the future. Almost like a mental muscle, number 2D-ing the reps in each day makes it much easier to think in a helpful way when we might need to in the future. Pre-planning. In therapy we number 2C and create crisis plans with people. Sometimes those are about staying safe in life or death situations. Other times they are to prevent relapse of addiction or number 2D-ing number 1 F track with a goal at a time when they might be vulnerable to giving up. You can make use of this to improve your chances of sticking to any plan. Look ahead at the change you want to make. Write down all the potential hurdles that could cause you to get number 1 F track. For each hurdle, make a plan of action about how you will prevent those hurdles from causing you to get number 1 F track or give up on your goals. Situation in advance, to make acting in line with your values and goals as easy as possible, and sabotaging those goals based on emotional urges as number 22 culp as possible. For example, if you want to get up on time every day, put the alarm clock just outside your room so that you have no choice but to get up. If you can anticipate the situations that may be number 22 cult and have a plan in place to deal with them, you won't have to think on your feet and wrestle with temptation or motivation at a time when you may feel vulnerable. This is just who I am now, returning to your identity. Motivation rises and falls along the journey of change. Returning to your sense of self and the identity you want to create can help you to persist when motivation has disappeared. Itself as someone who looks at number 2C or their dental hygiene. You pick up the toothbrush every day whether you feel like it or not, because it is just what you do. Our sense of identity does not have to be entirely fixed by what is laid out for us early in life. We continue to create and build on that identity throughout life with everything we do. When our goals are aligned, our intention to become the person we want to be, or even be number 2D, when we have decided that this is who we are now, then we can act in line with that even on the days when motivation is low. For more on how to steer your sense of identity, see Chapter 33 on how to work out what number 2D is. Toolkit, future self-memory and journaling improves your chance of making number 2D choices. Spend time imagining your future. When we create a vivid image of ourselves in the future, the easier it becomes to make choices in the here and now that will benefit your future. Peters and Buchel, 2010. Think about yourself at a point in the future and how you might feel about the choices you have made, what you said yes to and what you said no to. How will those choices have number 1 affected your life? Which of your choices and actions do you think you will be most proud of? When you reach that time in the future, what will you be focusing on? How will you feel about your past self when you look back? Pros and cons from dialectical behavior therapy, DBT. DBT is a psychological therapy that helps people to find safe ways to manage intense emotions. But the skills taught in DBT can be useful in many aspects of life, including those days when we are trying to stay on track with our goals but we don't feel motivated. Here's one of those skills. While it is helpful to consider the future that we do want, it is also helpful to look at the future we don't want. In therapy, some people spend time exploring in detail the pros and cons of both staying the same and working hard on change. You can use the table below to try for yourself. It pays to spend time being honest with yourself about the true extent of the cost of things remaining as they are. While change inevitably has disadvantages, we may have to tolerate distress and endure discomfort in our number one efforts. They may be outweighed by the price we pay for staying as we are. This can be a valuable exercise to come back to when we start to feel like giving up on a positive life change or we get out number one F track. Change. Keeping things the same. Try this. Building on your identity with intention takes some thought and conscious number one effort. Try seat number 2D, ing down with pen and paper to write out some answers to these questions. Number 2D, still, use a journal and keep coming back to your responses whenever you are working on a life change. What's the larger overall change that I am trying to make? Why is this change so important to me? What kind of person do I want to be as I face this challenge? How could I approach this challenge in a way that would make me feel proud when I look back on this period of my life, regardless of the outcome? What are those smaller goals that I need to achieve along the way? How would I like to face those days when motivation is low? Am I listening to my body and what it needs? Chapter summary. Can't rely on motivation to be there all the time. We practice acting in opposition to urges so that we can act in line with our values rather than how we feel right now. Repeat a new behavior enough times and it will become habit. For any big goal, rest and replenishment along the way is vital. Just ask any elite athlete. Make use of small rewards along the way. Chapter 9. Big life changes. Where do I start? Sometimes you reach a moment in your life when you realize a change is needed and you know exactly what the change is. But it doesn't always happen like that. More number 2C and then not, we go through a period of strain and discomfort. We start to recognize that things are not as we would like them to be, but we can't pinpoint exactly why or how we can begin to make it be. Number 2D. This is where your incredible human brain comes into its own. In chapter 3 we talked about metacognition. Our ability to not only consciously experience the world, but to also then think about and reassess the experience we had. This is a key life skill that we make use of in therapy. It is the epicenter of any big life change. You cannot change what you cannot make sense of. Albert reportedly once said, if I had an hour to solve a problem, I'd spend number 2C, 5 minutes thinking about the problem and 5 minutes thinking about solutions. This number 2C N comes to mind when I hear the common misconception that therapy consists of number 2D ing in a room and dwelling on your problems. It does involve thinking about your problems, but there is method in that. The most number 1F effective way to resolve a problem is to understand the problem inside out. So how do we use metacognition when we are facing big changes? Building awareness begins with looking back. In therapy or counseling, you can talk about things that have happened and get useful prompts from a therapist to help you make sense of it. For those who are using a self-help approach, journaling is a great place to start. There is no pressure to write huge amounts or to write in a way that makes sense to anyone else. The aim is to build on your ability to reflect on your experiences and how you responded to them. For example, let's say you failed an exam, and in the moments at number 2C or finding out, you called yourself a stream of unprintable names and told yourself that you will never amount to anything. Metacognition involves reflecting on those thoughts and how they further impacted on your experience. The power of using metacognition is that it opens up our ability to be accountable to ourselves and to examine the part we play in staying the same or making change. It reveals the big influence that seemingly small behaviors can have, both positive and negative. Journaling in this way can feel strange if we are used to glossing over things without paying too much number 2D attention to the details. But over time, those details can help us to build our awareness of our experience in hindsight, as we start to spot the cycles and number 2D earns of behavior in the moment, as they happen. This is when we create the possibility of choosing something number 1F errant and making the positive changes that we want for ourselves. Try this. Use these journal prompts to help you explore the problems you are tackling and practice the skill of thinking about your thoughts. Describe any significant events that happened. What thoughts did you have at the time? How did that way of thinking impact on how you felt? Describe any emotions you noticed. What triggered those emotions? What urges did you have? How did you respond to the feeling? What were the consequences of your response? Chapter summary. It's not always clear what we need to change and how to do it. You cannot change what you cannot make sense of. Get to know your problem inside out to make it easier to identify which way to go next. Start by reflecting on situations at number 2C or they have happened. Be ready to get honest with yourself about ways you may contribute to the problem or keep yourself stuck. Therapy supports you through this process. But if you don't have access to therapy, journaling can be a good place to start. Chapter 10. Make it all go away. If you ever go to therapy, very early on the therapist will ask you what you want from the process. Most people will include emotions in their answer. Or unpleasant emotions that they want to get rid of, and are missing out on some of the more enjoyable or calm ones that they would like to feel again. And while wouldn't they? We all just want to be happy. They feel at the mercy of those painful emotions and want them gone. Emotions go away in therapy. You learn to change your relationship with them, to welcome them all, to pay number 2D attention to them, to see them for what they are, and to act in ways that will influence them and change the intensity of them. Emotions are neither your enemy nor your friend. They do not occur because your brain has a few cogs misaligned or because you are a sensitive soul, as you were told in the past. Emotions brains at number 2D emp to explain and at number 2D ach meaning to what is going on in your world and your body. Your brain receives information from your physical senses about the outside world and from your bodily functions, like your heart rate, lungs, hormones and immune function. It then uses memory of these sensations that occurred in the past to make some sense of them now. This is why the heart palpitations brought on by too many cups of number 1 FEE can culminate in a panic at number 2D AC. Pounding heart, faster breathing and sweaty palms all feel a bit familiar to that time you had a panic at number 2D AC in the supermarket. The physical sensations feel just like fear and your brain gets the message that all is not well, which ramps up your threat response. Wouldn't it be great if we could wake up in the morning and just decide what to feel that day? Enter love, excitement and joy, please. Unfortunately it is not so simple. The opposite of this idea is that emotions just pop up, with no trigger, and we have no control over what happens or when it happens. All we can do is try to resist them, block them out and be rational. But this is also not the case. While we cannot directly trigger all emotions, we have much more influence over our emotional state than we were ever taught to believe. This does not mean that you are to blame for feeling emotional discomfort. It means that we get to learn about the many ways we can take responsibility for our own well-being and construct new emotional experiences. What not to do with emotions. Push them away. Imagine you are at the beach. You walk into the sea up to your chest. The waves need to pass over you to get to the shore. If you try to hold the waves back and prevent them reaching the shore, you learn how powerful those waves are. They push you back and you quickly get engulfed and overwhelmed. But you don't have to tumble and struggle against the wave. Those waves are coming number 2D or what? When you accept that, you can focus on keeping your head above the water as it passes. You still feel the number 1 FECTS. Might even get number 2C EDO, number 1 F your feet for a moment. But you move with the water and brace yourself ready to land back on your feet. Dealing with emotion is much the same as standing in the waves. When we try to stop feelings in their tracks, we easily get knocked out number 1 F our feet and find ourselves in trouble, struggling to catch a breath and work out which way is up. When we allow the emotion to wash over us, it rises, peaks and descends, taking its natural course. Believe they are facts. Emotions are real and valid, but they are not facts. They are a guess, a perspective that we try on for size. An emotion is the brains at number 2D emp to make sense of the world so that you can meet your needs and survive. Given that what you feel is not a factual statement, neither are thoughts. That is partly why therapies like CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, can be so helpful to many people. It gives us practice at being able to step back from thoughts and feelings and see them for what they are, just one possible perspective. If the thoughts and feelings are not facts but they are causing us distress, it makes sense to check it out and see whether it is a true reflection of reality or whether an alternative would be more helpful. When we treat our current thoughts and emotions as facts, we allow them to determine our thoughts and actions of the future. Then life becomes a series of emotional reactions rather than informed choices. So how do we stop buying into thoughts as if they are facts? We ask questions. Something that therapy gives us practice at is being curious about experiences in both our inner world and the world around us. Inhibit the opposite me and start talking about the things they got wrong that week, and feelings they shouldn't have had, stepping into the old habit of self-criticism and self-loathing. Then we sheet number 2C our perspective to a bird's eye view. We look at how those behaviors fit our formulation. We sheet number 2C into curiosity, where there is no need for self at number 2D AC. So, whether it has been a great week or a hard one, we learn and grow. Holding curiosity allows us to look at our mistakes and learn, when they might otherwise be too painful to acknowledge. Holding curiosity brings with it a sense of hope and energy for the future. Whatever happens, we're always learning. Toolkit: examine your coping strategies. What are the first signs for you that emotional discomfort is present? Is it a behavior? Do you recognize your blocking or protective behaviors? Where do you feel the emotion in your body? What thoughts are there? What beliefs are you buying into about this situation? What number 1 FECT is that having on you? Try writing down those thoughts and narratives. What can they tell you about what you are afraid of? What behaviors tend to follow a strong emotion? Do those behaviors help you in the short term? What is their longer-term impact? Ask a trusted friend to go over the story with you and help you identify any biases or misunderstandings. Explore with them the number 1 F errant perspectives you might have. Chapter summary. Emotions are neither your enemy nor your friend. We have more influence over our emotional state than we were ever taught to believe. Pushing emotion away can cause more problems than allowing it to wash over us and take its natural course. Emotions are not facts but are one possible perspective. If there is painful emotion, get curious, ask questions. What can they tell you? Chapter 11. What to do with emotions. If you have skipped straight to this chapter, you may be looking for the answer to emotional pain. What is that thing to make it all go away? Well, if that is you, bear with me. Please don't close the book just yet, but I am about to tell you the opposite of what you're probably hoping to hear. Somewhere in the middle of clinical training, we had an introduction to mindfulness. You might think that a bunch of trainee clinical psychologists would be open-minded enough to sit and learn patiently. But the room was full of giggles as we all tried to sit in silence and notice what we felt. Clinical training is all about doing, number 2ing things done. We were all firmly in, doing mode. To sheet number 2C into just being was proving a challenge for everyone in the room, much to the teacher's annoyance. At the time, I admit I was full of judgments about how I couldn't see myself using this or teaching it to anyone. But it was part of the program, so I had to try it out. As training progressed and became more stressful, I found myself in the midst of assessment season with a thesis to write and exams looming. Tension was high. One of my favorite tools for stress management at the time was running. I took a break from the desk and went out for a run through the local countryside. My head was buzzing with to-do lists and fears about number 2ing everything done and number 2ing it right. I had another go at using mindfulness, this time while I was moving. I followed a long gravel track through the woods and listened to the sound of my feet high, number 2ing the stones. I allowed the feelings of anxiety and stress to be with me. I didn't try to push them away. I didn't try to plan or problem solve. Anakin's mind would be number 1F telling me about the things I should be doing instead of this. Number 1F earing up worst case scenarios of missing deadlines, failing assignments and an email I needed to send when I got back home. Every time, I let the thoughts come. And every time, I let them pass behind me and return to the sound of my feet on the gravel. I must have gone through this process 1,000 times. Distract, pull back, distract, pull back. On the way back home, as I approached the end of the track, it hit me. I realized what it was that all the academic texts were struggling to convince me of. I still had all the same hurdles to face, but I wasn't fighting against the tension. I was allowing it to pass, so that is what it did. The idea of welcoming all emotional experience feels almost alarming at first. It is the opposite of what many of us are taught to do with feelings. We are taught that feelings are the opposite of rationality. Something to be squashed down and hidden, pushed to the back of your mind, and spoken. But allowing them to rise up, and even welcoming it. Many of us fear emotions, that is, until we begin allowing ourselves to experience them and understand that they all rise and fall like waves. Mindfulness enables us to use the tool of awareness. Awareness sounds very basic and rather vague, but it's the tool we never know we need until we use it. Number 1F, the autopilot and building awareness of thoughts, emotions, urges and actions adds in an amber light before the green light flashes and we act on an urge or emotion. Number 1F urges us the chance to consciously pause where autopilot may have driven us forward. So we give ourselves more chance to make the number 1F errant choices based on our values rather than simply responding to emotion. Ed works closely on a small detail of a large painting. She will occasionally take a step back and check that each new action fits in with the vision she has for the whole picture. The metacognitive tool of pausing between emotion and action is that same process of stepping back, even just for a moment, to check in with your thoughts and actions to see if they will be in line with the person you want to be. The ability to check in on the bigger picture, even for the smallest of moments, can have a powerful impact on the way we live life. As the river of constant thoughts flows, we get to put our head above water and check those thoughts are heading in the direction we want to move in. We consider that direction in the context of our meaning and purpose, and not just move with the flow because that is the way it naturally goes. See emotions for what they are. Seeing emotions for what they are is key to being able to process them in a healthy way. You are not your feelings and your feelings are not who you are. The sensation of an emotion is an experience that moves through you. Each emotion can know number 1F or you information, but not necessarily the whole story. There is something emotions are number 2D why useful for, it's telling you what you need. When we allow ourselves to feel emotion without blocking it out or pushing it away, we can turn towards it with curiosity and learn. Discovering what we need is even more valuable if we then use that information to do what is necessary and meet those needs. I think it is always useful to start with the physical. As discussed in previous chapters, no amount of therapy or psychological skills is going to overturn the destructive impact of poor sleep or diet and lack of physical activity. Once we start taking care of the body we live in, we are already well on the way to being able to work on the rest. Pick a name. When you feel something, give it a name. Learn lots of names for lots of emotions. We don't only feel happy, sad, fearful or angry. We feel vulnerable and ashamed, by number 2D, and grateful, inadequate and excited. In therapy a lot of work is put into this. Notice what you feel, notice where you feel it in your body, and label it. It is common for people to recognize the physical sensations, but have no idea what that emotion is, perhaps a legacy of past teachings that we don't talk about emotions. Nobody needed a name for each number 1F errant emotion because they never voiced it out loud. But they were able to pick out the physical manifestation of it because it has always been more acceptable to tell someone you feel sick and have a pounding heart, than to say you feel vulnerable and insecure. Increasing your emotional vocabulary so that you can distinguish finely between number 1F errant emotions helps you to regulate those emotions and choose the most helpful responses in social situations. Cashton et al., 2015. Self-soothing. When painful emotions are intense, it's very easy to say they will rise, peak and descend, but the reality of that experience can be excruciating, and lead to strong urges to do unhealthy or even dangerous things to make it all disappear sooner. While some self-help books might tell you that you can just think positive thoughts to change how you feel, I would say that's going to be a struggle. Trying to change how you think is hard enough when you are feeling fine. Trying to change the thoughts that arrive at the height of distress feels nearly impossible. When overwhelmed, the best strategy is to step back and be mindful of that emotion as much as possible, see it as a temporary experience, and to turn down the dial on our threat response by soothing our way through it. Therapy called dialectical behavior therapy (DBT), we teach individuals how to soothe their way through distressing emotions with simple skills that help you to ride the wave until it comes back down. These are called distress tolerance skills. One of those skills is called self-soothing. Linehan, 1993. Self-soothing is any set of behaviors that help you to feel safe and soothe as you experience a painful emotion. When your threat response is triggered, the message being received by your brain is, we are not safe. All is not okay. Do something about this now. If we want that distressing emotion to stop escalating and start its process of coming back down to baseline, we need to feed our body and brain new information that we are safe. There are lots of ways we can do this, because your brain takes its information from each of your senses. That means you can use each of those to send messages to your brain that you are safe. It also takes its information from the physical state of your body, including your heart rate, breathing rate and muscle tension. This is physical experiences that relax muscles, such as a warm bath, can be number 1 F active in contributing to GE, number 2 D ing you through distress. Other self-soothing ideas include a warm drink, a chat with a trusted friend or loved one, physical movement, calming music, beautiful images, slow breathing, relaxation techniques, a scent or perfume you associate with safeness and comfort. One of the quickest ways to tell your brain that you are safe is actually through your sense of smell. Finding that you associate with safety or comfort, maybe the perfume of a loved one or a lavender scent that you find calming, can be helpful in helping you to focus the mind and calm the body at the same time. For those who struggle with distressing emotions when out in public, here's an example. A popular choice in therapy has been to carefully unstitch a sew number 2 seat toy, fill it with lavender, and sew it back up. Whenever you are out in public and start to feel overwhelmed, you can breathe in the scent and ground yourself, soothe yourself through it without anyone even noticing. A great tool that is number 2C and used in DBT is to create self-soothing boxes. The reason such a great idea is that when you are in emotional pain, at the height of your distress, your brain is set up to bypass your problem-solving capabilities. If you are under threat, you don't have time to think things through. This is when your brain makes a quick guess for you and acts on impulse. A self-soothing box is something you prepare in advance, when you are able to think through what most helps in times of distress. Grab an old shoebox and fill it with anything that could help to soothe you when you are in distress. As described above, anything that you associate with feelings of safety and comfort is great to include. I have a self-soothing box in my therapy room that I use as an example. Inside that box is a note to call a particular friend. Seeking help may not be our first thought when we are struggling, but following a simple instruction to call a trusted friend can steer us in the right direction. As known from previous chapters, human connection helps us to recover from stress more quickly. Other things that I included in my self-soothing box are a pen and pad of paper. If you cannot bring yourself to talk, then expressive writing has been shown to help us to process emotion and make sense of what is happening. Include lavender oil or any scent that you associate with comfort, some photographs of people who care about you and whom you care about, and a list of soothing or UPLI number 2C ing music tracks to play. Carefully chosen music can have a powerful impact on our emotional state. Create a playlist of tracks that will help you to feel calm, safe and soothed when you are distressed. My box also includes a tea bag, because in England we associate tea with comfort and connection. Including something like this in the box is simply a clear instruction to follow when you might otherwise be struggling to think through what you need. Crucially, keep that box somewhere that is easy to find when you might need it. This will be making things easier for you to cope in the way that you want to during the toughest of times, to help you stay away from the less than healthy habits when you are vulnerable to using them. Chapter Summary. You are not your feelings and your feelings are not who you are. The sensation of emotion is an experience that moves through you. Each emotion can know number 1 F or you information but not necessarily the whole story. If there is something emotions are useful for, it's telling us what we need. When you feel something, give it a name. Try to label emotions with more detail than just happy or sad. Allow emotions to be present and soothe your way through, rather than blocking them out. Chapter 12. How to harness the power of your words. The language we use can have powerful number 1 F ECTS on our experience of the world. It's our tool for making sense of things, helping us to categorize sensations, learn from past experiences, share that knowledge and predict and plan for future experiences. Words for emotions have gradually been used more and more to mean number 1 F errant things, until they have taken on broad and vague meanings. Happy has become an umbrella term for anything positive, to the extent that nobody really knows if what they are feeling qualifies as happy. If I feel passionate, am I happy? If I feel calm and content, am I happy? If I feel inspired and energized, is that happy? The same has happened to words like depression. What is a depressed mood, exactly? Sadness, emptiness, agitation, numbness, uneasiness, restlessness, flatness. Is any of this really number 2D or? Well, as it turns out, it does. Having fewer or words to number 1 F differentiate discrete negative emotions is associated with higher levels of depression at number 2C or stressful life events, Star et al., 2020. Those who are able to distinguish between negative feelings tend to be more flexible in how they respond to problems. For example, they are less likely to binge drink under stress, are less reactive to rejection and show less anxiety and fewer depressive disorders. Kashdan et al. 2015. This doesn't mean that those things are caused by the D. Number 22 culties in distinguishing between negative feelings, but it does show that we have a powerful tool that we can use to help us through D. Number 22 cult times. The more new build up to D. Number 1F differentiate between feelings, the more options your brain has for making sense of various sensations and emotions. When you have a more accurate word for a feeling, this helps to regulate your emotions and in turn means less stress for your body and mind overall. This is a crucial tool if you want to be more flexible and Number 1F active in how you respond to challenges that you face. Feldman Bar, Number 2D, 2017. The good news is that this is a skill we can all keep building upon. Here are some ideas for how to build up your emotional vocabulary. Get specific. When you feel something, try to go beyond, I feel awesome, or, I'm not happy. What other words can you use to describe this feeling? Is it a combination of feelings? What physical sensations do you notice? One emotion label may not be enough to encapsulate this feeling. Is it a combination of feelings? For example, I feel nervous and also excited. There is no right or wrong way to label an emotion. The key is to find a description that you and the people around you can become familiar with. If you can't find the words, you can make up your own or find words from other languages that don't have a clear translation. Explore new experiences and play around with ways to describe those experiences. From tasting new foods, to meeting new people, reading books or visiting somewhere new. Each new experience Number 1F is the opportunity to view things from a D. Number 1F errant perspective. When it comes to building up the ability to describe those new experiences, take every opportunity to learn new words. This does not have to only come from books, although it can. It can also come from music, movies and any other place that exposes you to new words to describe how you feel. Write down experiences and explore ways to describe how you felt. If you feel at a loss for words when trying to describe how you feel, and need help to build up your emotional vocabulary, The Feeling Wheel Wilcox, 1982, is a great resource that is Number 2C and used in therapy for exactly this purpose. You can keep a copy in the cover of your journal and use it to find more specific words. You can also use the blank spaces to add in your own words as you come across them in other places.